Falling in the polls and facing pressure on all sides, one of the giants of Canadian politics, the Premier of Quebec, François Legault, announcing he is stepping down and will not be part of the re-election in the next provincial election. And it's another change in Quebec government that ties into, along with Paul Micucci, another show we had about problems with healthcare and doctors and nurses. And Quebec is going through a big change right now. Paul, how you doing?
Good, Jim. And yeah, huge change. I saw him at the Premier's meeting the other day. So he's staying on a little longer until they transition and find a new leader. I found something out new. You lived in
I did.
Montreal?
Yeah, I did. I lived in Montreal in the early 90s, and I was there when Robert Bourassa was premier and building up to the referendum of 1995. And Quebec politics, it's very strong. The one thing about Quebec in politics, the unions are incredibly strong, where unions in other jurisdictions in the country maybe don't have the same clout and power they used to. They have incredible clout and power in Quebec. And as a premier, as a politician, to cross them, to mess with them, to fight with them,
yes,
to me is political suicide.
Well, it turned out to be. So, yeah, it turned out to be. Well, you know, it's interesting because, you know, from a business perspective, because I look at Legault as a interesting kind of test case in political leadership, because he was the co-founder of Air Transit. He was
very successful airline,
very successful guy. Lifted what is very tough industry to get into in Canada, lifted it off, got it underway, and made it a success. Ran this as the CEO until 1997, and then hopped into politics. Right, a tough transition because, you know, we're seeing it. We talk about it also for our prime minister right now, to go from the private sector into, you know, government public sector is hard because you're thinking, your processes are much different. And at least, you know, our prime minister spent some time in government, you know, working with, you know, the banks. So that was a plus, but he went straight into government with PQ, I think it was at the beginning. And then
the CAQ party.
And then he jumped over into the CAQ and started with Soros, the billionaire, the Telesystems or whatever. He's the backer, had lots of money, decided to start a new party, got Legault in play, and really jettisoned it into a huge success just pre-COVID. So he kind of took off and off he went. And to tell you the truth, I was looking at the numbers because I'm a numbers guy, and I was kind of studying the numbers. They're pre-COVID, his revenue growth, his, you know, he wasn't having a lot of budget. His budget deficits were very low, if any. And
the Quebec economy was really strong at the time.
It was booming going into COVID, right? Then he hit COVID like the rest of us, and it just seemed like it sank and never came back, quite frankly. It actually came out of COVID, and a huge imbalance. Like, they came out of COVID, and the deficits, I think the deficit, I was looking at it just coming into the show, the 2025 deficit was like $13.5 billion. So he just kept sinking, costs got out of whack, and just couldn't get it back in play.
I had a friend who was doing volunteer work, who was a retired police officer in the Montreal area, and she was telling me that basically her and a group of people, they were driving supplies around to senior homes during the pandemic. And it was almost the infrastructure for senior care, for healthcare, was exposed during the pandemic. And I mean, I don't care what language you speak and what your background, there's basic foundational things you need from your government: education, healthcare, infrastructure. That's almost the big three, right? I want proper roads to get to where I need to go, in transit. If I'm sick, I want to have someone to take care of me, and I want my kids to go to a good school.
Yeah.
And when there are cracks in that foundation, that's, to me, will lead to the downfall of any politician.
It's true.
Apparently, except Doug Ford in Ontario, but that's another story.
No, it's true. And you know, he when he took over, he told everyone his philosophy. So I was looking at that because I remember those press conferences where he said Quebec was slowly losing linguistic and cultural leverage. Institutes were lagging behind reality. Soft governance had failed to stop erosion. Incrementalism wasn't enough. And if you don't act decisively now, you will lose the option later. So that was kind of his mantra through his governance. And you know, he did govern with a fairly iron hand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's in very strong what they call the French language police.
Right.
Now, I know from working at a radio station there in the early 90s, you would have francophone listeners. I worked at an English radio station, and the only English they could say would be play Genesis, play the Rolling Stones, and everything else would be in French. And you say, oh, thank you, merci. And whether the Quebec politicians and the francophone French police like it or not, you can't deny the influence of English rap, English hip hop, English music, rock, pop music, or English culture in movies, no matter what language. And I know that's a thing where they demand French signs and it's always French first, which is fine. They're trying to preserve the French culture.
Right.
But they can't stop a young person from watching, you know, a Marvel movie in English, or listening to, you know, whatever favorite music, whether it's Taylor Swift, whether they speak English or not, they're still going to listen to it.
Right, right. Well, and you know, again, I think that's where he was going, and quite frankly, it didn't work out. But you know, he ran into a number of let's talk coming out of COVID, bad scandals, let's call them too.
Yes,
and
well, the insurance.
The insurance. So, you know, that one basically was about $1 billion cost overrun. The Auditor General wrote a whole report, scathing report on it. And he basically came out and said, listen, I lost control over the overruns. Didn't look good. And then Northvolt happened right after COVID, right? The electric battery, the Swedish company, that came and gone. And that was about $280 million that they had loaned to the company to get the electric company cars going, and never happened, right?
And for Quebec citizens who pay steep tax, they're among the most heavily taxed people in the country, to be that slap in the face, they're not going to forgive that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's fine I'm paying all this tax, but to piss away $250 million, that's not going to fly.
Right. And then I guess, Jim, you know, in the midst of that, the show that you and I did, here they are, no health care.
No.
So the healthcare eroded in, and you know, it's a slippery slope. So as he's putting all these very tough mandates into place, the public is not able to see a doctor, can't find, waiting for hours in waiting rooms.
Doctors leaving to other provinces.
Well, as soon as he kind of put down the hammer and said, which, you know, you and I had a few shows about it. I wasn't totally against everything he was doing there. So I want to be, you know, pretty clear. His health minister at the time, which he actually then resigned, you know, and basically discussed, because he had to concede with the doctors to reach a resolution after they went sort of too heavy-handed. But, you know, I wasn't against everything they were doing. You know, the metrics they were putting into place, that they're trying to get the doctors to bill differently. I thought there were some good pieces inside of that, right? Which I think sometimes, again, coming from the private sector, right? You know, he's used to having his way. He goes in, you know, him and his health minister, we're going to do this, you're going to do that. You know, very authoritative, right?
Which is how probably he ran Air Transat with his management team.
He would have had to, right?
When it came to maintenance pilots and booking and everything to make it profitable.
Yeah, of course. And, you know, a high cap spend to an airline is a tough, you know, and you're thin margin, and you have to run it very efficiently to make money, and you have to be very good at it. So, you know, probably was, like I said, a tough, disciplined business person coming into politics. That was what he ran on. So it's interesting. And, you know, I look at a little bit, I'm going to go sideways here, because I look at the Calgary Conservative Convention. I just came from last week. Yeah. And, you know, one of the things we talked about is the delegates needed to give the party a direction coming out of the convention. Well, you know, I don't think that happened. But, you know, and I think every leader does need, as they go into office, some direction, whether it be from the people who vote him in, whether his delegation, his, you know, their caucus, they do need direction and support. So I think he started off very strong because the province was wavering. You know, it needed a heavier hand to come in and run some programs. It has, you know, as Utah and I talked about earlier, it has horrific infrastructure issues, whether it be bridges, roads. It's still
constant in Quebec. It's never ending.
Well, the mayor this morning, right? He said he was in the news. You know, our potholes are catastrophic.
The mayor of Montreal?
Yeah.
Now, for the mayor of Montreal to say that must be a bad pothole.
Yeah. Well, you know, they're 4 feet deep. So, you know, he was just saying these are like, I don't know what to do now.
And we're only in February.
Yeah.
And with the freeze and thaws, it's only going to get worse. So in a big picture, look at François Legault's legacy. Had COVID not hit with his business private management style and the success they had, it probably continues on and we're not having this conversation. But unfortunately, he tried to still run it like he did pre-COVID. And sometimes a politician has to pivot and change their ways, and change their management style to survive. And we've seen some premiers do that over the years to save their skin, to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, he just didn't, right? And his costs, you know, he had, as I mentioned, he had a couple scandals, the Northvolt, the doctors, and then deficit spending. He just, you know, as he tried to spend more money on healthcare, tried to spend more money on infrastructure, he just wasn't eclipsing his challenges. And quite frankly, his revenues had grown significantly. They had taxed, as you mentioned.
They're heavily taxed.
One thing he did do when he got in power, he did increase the taxes significantly. And he said to everyone, you know, you're behind me. I'm going to get the infrastructure working again. You're going to pay more. And I think people were patient for a while. Now, what hurt him, it's interesting you're talking about it. What hurt him was, quite frankly, we went into COVID, right? And people got softer. You know, they got more funded, more government money and
Disturb and all that.
Exactly. Yeah. So they softened up a little on him where they were behind him before. They came out of COVID. You know, he couldn't do much with revenues, but he had all these huge cost bases. They would just keep climbing and climbing and climbing. So, you know, interesting. The doctors thing, I don't know what to say about that because quite frankly, he inherited it. And it just got worse and worse. And how he was going to find his way out of it, you know.
But that is, to me, Paul, that's the essence of a politician, is finding a way to convince someone who doesn't like you to do what you need to do, to convince someone who doesn't agree with you that we're going to, quote unquote, work together. And you think you've won a little battle. I think I've won a little battle, and we go forward. Yeah. But to put your head down like a battering ram, like I'm the boss, this is how we're going to do it, it rarely works. And especially in a province like Quebec, they have really strong passionate feelings about labor and unions and protecting the people and the workers. And this is where the case where some politicians, whether you like them or not, have a knack of working with the people who don't like them. So things keep going. And they not only do they survive, but their jurisdiction survives. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. So the interesting thing, so this is, you know, where we are today with him leaving. And the interesting thing in the province, and this is what's scaring a lot of people now, what's next?
I don't know whoever is the next premier. They're going to be a very, very difficult task.
Yeah.
With the crumbling infrastructure, with the issues in healthcare and education. The Quebecois politicians are fighting to preserve the French language when, quite frankly, a lot of the population are coming in, like all other provinces, through immigration. That's how they're building. And it's hard. It's a real challenge in Quebec. And they're hoping, the federal government have talked about the high-speed rail from Ottawa to Quebec City.
Yeah.
That would help a lot. But realistically, how many years are we talking about? Whoever is the next premier still might be premier when that thing starts running.
Well, and then now you have separatism discussions.
Absolutely.
On top of it. So now you're back, you know, again, we were in Alberta last week, but part of the discussion in Alberta was about Quebec again.
How could it not be? I mean, they've had multiple referendums in their history. Alberta's talking about it. And Quebec, they've been down this road before.
But Quebec, with the net transfer payments being so negative, what would be the rationale?
Often it's been my belief, the rationale when they talk about this, after the vote, what happens? They get something.
Right.
They get something from the federal government. Oh, thank God you're not leaving Canada. Let's work out a deal. You get this and you get that, and we'll fix this. And there's more money into the provincial coffers. So they end up making out financially.
Yeah, it could be, and that was the pipeline analysis last week, right? If they do this, then basically they'll soften on pipelines. The pipelines will come through, we'll be back in business in Alberta. You know what? We did a show though, and I actually left the show. I went in thinking that. I left the show. I wasn't so convinced. So it's interesting. Quebec is, if you look at what is produced the most in Quebec.
Oh, right now it's the Bombardier airplanes, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, well, one of the things. So steel, quite frankly, it's
Dairy.
There are some big items in Canada that are produced there, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have some big, like you said, agricultural and manufacturing that goes on in Quebec. So we would have to figure out, a new party comes in. If they did ever want to separate, that would leave a huge void.
Well, especially when Mark Carney and the federal government are this close to signing a deal with Saab to build hundreds of planes at the Bombardier facility in suburban Montreal. That's the future of the Canadian military. A lot of the Canadian defense spending is to build those planes and those aircraft facilities in the greater Montreal area.
Yeah.
That would be a huge issue.
Oh, it is. Well, and Trump, as we saw the other day, Bombardier just came out and said basically, if you're not going to let the Gulfstream be sold in Canada, quite frankly, I'm going to put a tariff on.
Now, I looked that up. And he talked about decertifying the plane. The only authority in America that has the right to decertify a plane is the FAA.
Oh.
The president does not. I confirm that. The last time they actually decertified any aircraft was a helicopter in the early 80s because they had too many crashes that could not be explained. They decertified it. They suspended the 737 MAX because of the accidents with the saying, if you don't fix this, we'll decertify it. They fixed the problems.
Oh.
And at the same time, the U.S. Army has a contract they just signed to buy 11 Global 6500 from Bombardier for their Army surveillance planes.
Oh.
So I don't know where Trump came up with that.
Okay.
The U.S. Army just bought 11 because they have this high-tech surveillance radar and sophisticated software they're going to put in those Quebec-made planes to survey the battlefield of the future. And they are the top-selling private jet in the world. Oh. They have a sterling safety record.
Okay.
And only the FAA can decertify a plane. This is where Trump is off his meds because he cannot decertify. You could slap a tariff, but he cannot decertify any plane. The president does not have that right in America.
Right. Well, I think the tariffs were the key part, though.
Well,
right?
yeah.
The 50% tariffs is what was going to be.
So you're telling me that he's going to slap 100% tariff on a plane the U.S. Army wants right now for their future battlefield? I'm pretty sure the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Pentagon will say, I don't think so. Because they have a budget to work in with as well. They want those planes. They bought them over everything else because it was deemed by the U.S. Army to be the best weapons platform for their future.
Right.
That says a lot. That's how good those planes are.
Yeah. Oh,
and so, I mean, so that's where Trump is completely gone cuckoo when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So, okay, so back to Quebec for a minute, because it's interesting. And, so we're in the midst, new leader, talk of separatism, new party coming in, election upcoming.
All right, so there's an election. I think it would take time till they actually have a referendum. So say you're voted premier, you'd have to actually do the job for a while before you have a referendum with the people.
So CAQ runs for a while.
Oh yeah, because when I lived there, the new premier, it was just over a year after he took over in early 94 before there was a referendum.
Right.
So you're looking at least sometime in 2027, late 2027, if there was a referendum in Quebec.
Right. What does the new leader do? So this is interesting because Legault left with a cabinet was just in shambles, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the reasons he left, quite frankly, because the health minister went, the finance minister was off. So there was no one on side with him, right?
Well, and at the same time, Pablo Rodriguez, the former federal minister, has all the problems with the Liberal Party of the province of Quebec.
Yes.
Like in Quebec, politics is very, very interesting to say the least right now. And as far as the future, Paul, as far as the next premier, it would take months just to figure out the mess that he's inheriting and then what I have to do next to keep the province running.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's actually scary a little bit. You can see why the instability is causing some discussions about separatism, because they're trying to figure out what to do and who's coming in. And quite frankly, the people there must be.
Look, I mean, when you're saying the mayor of Montreal that the potholes are potentially dangerous,
Yes,
that it's a crisis situation, healthcare, they've got their hands raised. We need money like right now.
well, they didn't fix healthcare.
No.
So just so, and I wanted to go back to that before the show ends. You know, it's a very interesting discussion because, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back was healthcare. I think we agree.
Oh,
that was
absolutely.
That's what kind of made everything fold out and fall apart. So they didn't, but at the end, they reached a concession. They didn't really fix it. And still, people are without doctors, without the doctor. You know, the doctor's got a modified resolution. I agree. And
They're still waiting in the hallway in the emergency room.
but the people didn't get a modified resolution.
No.
So infrastructure problems, you still have a huge healthcare void that still hasn't solved. So regardless of whether he was wrong or right, indifferent to whatever he did, quite frankly, there still didn't get a solution that actually helped the people, right? And I think we agree on that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
100% agree.
So he's leaving.
Yeah.
He's leaving with I don't know if you call it a failed tenure, but he's leaving with a lot of things unaccomplished.
A mixed review.
It's a mixed review, you know, at the end of the day, heavy-handed, probably didn't transition well, for, like I said, from private to public. But, you know, I think a lot of things against him environmentally. But he's leaving with that. But the province is left with that bag. And I think that's the interesting part, because I know they wanted to force him out. I know the unions didn't like him. I know the doctors didn't like him. His polling is tanked.
Yeah.
His cabinet fell apart. But I always find it interesting. So it'll just go on?
Well,
I guess. And people always say that. Well, it's just going to go on, right?
Well, then no one's going to come in and perform a miracle in Quebec, the new premier. That's not possible with what they're being handed. How could they?
Well,
how could they fix it in a few months?
Think about it for a minute again. And I'm just the last couple of days, Jim, which is very interesting because it opened my eyes a lot when I went to Calgary. Right? So I was like, boing, right? You know? So I come back from Calgary. No one competed for that leadership.
Well, no.
No, I know they say he did an okay job, but quite frankly, no one competed for the Conservative Party leadership. Is that many people going to compete to be the premier of Quebec right now? Because I got to tell you, stepping into that role, you're probably, you're probably a short-term gig. And then let's talk about that. Years ago, you used to step into those roles and then used to step out of those roles and used to go get another gig.
Board of directors.
Sit on a board, and it used to be very mature people, a little up there in age, because quite frankly, their career was done. They didn't need to go back into private sector, right? There's not that many candidates anymore. Now, I know there's 5 parties. I get it. There's 5 parties, and there's always going to be someone who can step up. But how many of those people in those parties are real? How many of those people are actually sitting there just trying to get to pension status? Because a lot of politics nowadays, listen, we're all learning quite a bit about, from the NDPs in the federal side years ago. We're all learning, quite frankly, that getting to your pension date is pretty key. So
you're a successful business person in Quebec with political ties.
Right.
And someone approaches you, we'd like you to run for the CAQ to be the next premier. You're like, no, thank you.
Hell no.
Well, what? That's a can't win situation. You're one and done. I'm making good money. I don't have to put the public scrutiny, the media scrutiny. That's the problem. Who would want to put up with that?
Well, and quite frankly, now you have, part of your community wants to separate again. So now you're going into it with a whole faction of protests, just coming out from Alberta. People think, it was interesting. I think Ontarians really underestimate. I was shocked. the number of people lining up, signing petitions,
Mhm.
I think they'd be awestruck if they saw what we saw when we went out there, and the number of people, and the honest, how did I say it? The honest dislike of the current two political parties federally. Like, I think really they don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
I think when you're in the restaurants, when you're having a drink, when you're out, just walking and talking to people, there is a huge dislike of the two existing parties. I won't say one or the other, but there's no one more disliked than the other in my view when I went out there. I think they're both disliked, and I think they've hit their wall. Now you go to Quebec, you're getting that sentiment again is on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to step in and say, hey, I'm going to go get something. What are you going to give them? To your point, what gift are you going to give Quebecers at this point from a federal perspective that are going to make them happy and realign?
I mean, maybe you could say I helped broker a deal to get those 100+ planes built at the Bombardier plant. There's some jobs in manufacturing.
Yeah.
Okay, that helped. Maybe there's some shipbuilding in Quebec City. Maybe that helps. Maybe they start laying the track for the high-speed rail. I mean, it would have to be a big project with lots of jobs that would last for years for some benefit, right? I mean, because here's the issue. I think a lot of Canadians, especially people in Ontario, in Southern Ontario, don't realize the hard feelings in parts of Quebec and parts of Alberta. And a lot of people think, well, why would they think that way? They haven't taken the time, as you did, to go out there and talk to them.
Yeah.
And realize that they have a lot of grievances and concerns that they feel isn't met in Ottawa or isn't met with a lot of the federal politicians. They don't listen to their needs, and my needs aren't being met.
Yeah, we did a show with Javon Manjet. It was a very interesting
Fantastic.
show.
What a brilliant individual.
Yeah, it was interesting. And he laid out a whole history that I knew some of it vaguely, but I'm not from there. And he, so you take that history and you compile it and you take it to today. And you start, when I left, when I went in, I thought, oh, this is going to be just a show. And then when I left, I was like, oh, he's got quite a compelling argument. Like, his argument is, whether I like it or not, is indifferent. His argument is very compelling to why they want to do what they want to do. And the Quebecers have the same, but I'm just wondering now, like, if I'm sitting there, like, first thing I do, if I was the government, federal government, I'd go help them with healthcare. I'd go get the healthcare situation fixed, because quite frankly, getting them adjusted on the healthcare front and that all fixed again
might dial the heat down in any sort of referendum.
Giving them work, you live there more than I did, and I've done a little bit of work in Quebec, not as much as you because you live there, but it's more about life and joy and
Absolutely.
culture than it is about work.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
For the most
part. It's a very European mindset.
Very European mindset.
They don't, what they call it, work to live, not live to work.
Exactly. Right. So you want to take care of their quality of life first and make sure that's working, because it's not right now. Right. We saw that. When we got into the doctors thing, I think we were both kind of,
well, we were shocked.
Yeah, like, when we started picking the numbers apart, right? We're like, yeah, that's a mess, right?
Yes.
So,
and who fixes it?
Yeah. Well, he didn't.
Well, no,
he didn't. He left. Like, again, he's gone. He's like, I'm sure the one thing he's going at home night with his wife, he's probably eating dinner and going, thank goodness I don't have to touch that again, because he doesn't have to touch healthcare. He's done. He signed a deal with the doctor temporarily, whatever. He signed it off, right? Whether that works or not, he's
Wouldn't you, Paul?
Oh, at this point, yeah, sure.
Well, I mean,
he did his time.
Yeah, he did his, like, he's late 60s, long career in business. He gave back to the public as a politician. Now he's ready to, like, someone else's problem.
Yeah.
Good luck to you. Bon chance.
Yeah. No, I agree. But it does actually ask the question again. A successful business person going in and trying to actually fix, because you know what? That's who we should be wanting to go into politics.
Yeah, but they're not going to take that job.
They're not going to take that job for a number of reasons. But maybe there is a way that we have to start looking at attracting people to do the job. And
they almost need a francophone version of Carney, who has a lot of money and a lot of experience, that says, I'm going to go in and tackle this problem if they can find it, if they're willing to do what Carney did.
Yeah.
That's the big challenge in the province of Quebec.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Jim.